She clicked it with her nose. Oh, am I live on both? Oh, okay. Welcome back to Grit Gym. Today we're going over spine hygiene, and in this video I'm going to tell you the number one thing you need to do to stop messing with your back. So your back stops hurting, you stop having chronic pain, you stop having pain later on in the day, energy leaks, taking away from the life that you want to live. And then you can work out consistently. Then you can actually show up and do the things that you want to do so that you're pushing out into your life the way that you want to push out in your life. But these are the things we're going to go over. There's 11 of them. How to stand up, how to sit down, how to get to the ground, how to stand up from the ground, how to get out of bed, do the dishes, squat to poop, because we all got to do that, right? Everybody poops. Put on your shoes, take off your shoes, exercise, and the last one, which is probably the biggest one, is probably the one that you need to do the most. Stop stretching. It is so rare that you need to stretch your low back to make it to make it actually heal. Stretching is probably perpetuating the entire problem that you are having. And if you're interested in seeing what your circumstance is like, come out and get an assessment. You get that at gritgym.com/PDS, and we're actually going to do the assessment, one-on-one session, and then we're going to build a program specific to you that can help you with your back, so you can actually do workouts where you don't feel in pain and aren't, like we said, perpetuating the problem. And this is the number one thing. Is the number one thing. So if you're on here, this is the time to perk up and listen. Number one thing is to stop picking the scab. I almost messed that up. Stop picking the scab. Okay, that's the number one thing going on in your low back. You have a scab there, and everybody tries to treat this thing like it's a ball and socket joint. It is not a ball and socket joint. These discs, these bones, are surrounded by like collagen fibers. They're not just like, it's not like they can just float around and do whatever you want them to. They only have a finite amount of rotation and extension and flexion. And the big thing is that you don't want to do those two things at once. So every once in a while I see somebody crank into this one where they rotate and crank against it, and then they kick that leg forward to stretch out their low back, probably because it gives them an analgesic response. It's a painkiller that lasts about 20 minutes to 2 hours. Okay, it's the same thing that you get when you go to a chiropractor. It's the same thing that you get when you stretch out your back. It just makes you feel good for a little bit, and then it's gone. Okay, so what do you have to do to stop picking the scab? Well, you have to do these in the right way. Okay, I almost guarantee you that the reason that you have the back injury is because of the movements that you've used for the last 10, 20, 30 years. Okay, every time that you reach down to tie your shoes, every time that you do the dishes, when you're rolling out of bed and you crank on that low back, that's picking the scab. So first thing we got to do, we got to stop picking the scab so that the body's natural healing process can take its course and do its thing. So first one, I think, let's go over how to actually get down. The most comprehensive one that we can do is how to get down on the floor. Okay, this is really hard for people. Let's have you go that way a little bit, and I'll be out here in the middle, and whoa there. Really did a 360 spin. All right, Blair Witch Project style. So what we're going to do to get down on the floor, we're going to have to go through all that list. Okay, so the first thing you got to do is get a hinge pattern. Right now your hinge pattern is probably something like this. It's probably how you take off your shoes, and all that does is just scratching at that scab. And how back injuries happen is not usually traumatic like that. It's not this big trauma. It's a straw that broke the camel's back. It's no different than me going like that to my hand. If I did this at this pace for long enough, hours, maybe days, I'm going to eventually get a big scar right there. It's going to be all gnarly and nasty. So I don't want to do that, right? So what we're going to do is first we got to work on the hinge. We got to be able to sit back into our hips, use our glutes, and we're going to do that. We're going to have that middle part of our hand, and we're just going to slide that down the thigh, really pushing back into the muscle there and get to the top of that kneecap. Okay, this is a position you have to master. Okay, so spend some time there. If the back moves at all, we did it wrong. You got to start over again. So you're pushing, sitting back into the hips. You should feel your glutes. We don't want the pelvis to move. We want the relationship between your low back, between your spine of the low back portion of your spine, that's what I was trying to say, and your pelvis. We want that relationship to stay the same. Okay, so we're hinging back, getting right on top of the knee. Okay, come back up. We should use the hips to do that. Okay, so we're sliding our hands down. Okay, and then if we had to sit, we could tilt back, but we're going to come down, get in this position. All right, from here, we can use our hands out for balance, but we have to take one step back and we go into basically a lunge or a split squat, right? Now we've got one knee down, okay? Now we get to take this other knee, put it back. Now we get to slide down again, back into the hip, till you can get one hand on the ground, and then you're gonna crawl out. You see how my back has not moved yet? And then I'm going to do basically just let myself down to the floor. Now, here's the thing. You've got to roll, okay? If we do it like this, look at me. My arm is stopping me from going over. So I need to be able to reach one arm out. Okay, now this is where most people do. They go like that. But now we're still twisting here. All right, what we have to do is drive this foot backing up as we push with our arm. Okay, so we're looking over the top of that shoulder, drive the foot, push with the arm, and we've rolled. Okay, now we can do whatever we needed to do on our back, right? Now, how do we get back over? Well, we've got to drive with our hip, we've got to reach with our arm until we flow over. Now, this is the one where everybody messes up because they go like this to stand up, or they kick their butt up in the air. Get your elbows underneath you and shimmy back into your hips, pushing your butt back that way, not trying to push yourself up. Don't try to do a push-up. Get where you're strong, okay? In wrestling, we used to have to do that all the time because in wrestling, you've got a guy behind you, and so you're not going to be able to just, like, I weigh 235 pounds. If there's a 235-pound guy on top of me, he want to keep me down, I don't care how hard I push. I might be able to push him up if I'm strong enough. It's going to be a lot easier to just get myself back up by pushing back that way. All right, so now that I've gotten up to this position, now I can sit up nice and tall. I can put one foot up, and I can stand. Okay, that's the most comprehensive one, getting down and getting back up. Okay, but that's how you have to get down, how you have to get back up, how you have to roll out of bed, how you have to sit down. So if I'm going to sit down on the toilet and I've got a lot of issues with my low back and I need to grab something like Stacy the iPad, I'm going to hinge back into my hips like that, right? So you got a lot of back issues, slide the hands down, hinge at the knee to be able to sit down, okay? And then to come back up. You've got to stop picking the scab. What about putting on your shoes? Should I reach down like this and tear up my back? Or can you find something like a higher chair, or that could have worked too, to put your foot up on, to bring your foot to your chest? See, now I'm not moving at my low back again. Okay, same thing with picking something up, with any of these movements. So getting out of bed, picking something up off the floor. Is this better? Or is this better, okay? People don't realize how often they're picking that scab over and over and over again. How do you brush your teeth at night? When you go to spit out the toothpaste, how do you do it, okay? When you're sweeping, how do you do it? When you're doing the dishes, how do you do it? When you're putting on your shoes, how do you do it? When you lay down in bed and get out of bed, how do you do it? When you stand up off of the toilet, how do you do it? All these little, when you get out of the car, how do you do it? Okay? All of these little things, they add up, all these little movement patterns. So we have to get very good at this hinge, because every time that you hinge, and you do this hundreds of times a day probably, you're picking the scab. So we have to get very good at the hinge. And then we've got to get very good at getting down on that one knee so that we can get here, so that we can slide back, so that we can roll out, so that we can get here, so that we can push over, so that we can push back, so that we can crawl ourselves back up, so that we can pick one knee up, and so that we can stand. Okay? You have to stop picking the scab if you want your back to get better. And the thing about the spine is that it will heal. We know, it is proven over and over and over and over and over again that the best way to be proactive with your back is to let the thing heal. It is not to go to the chiropractor. It is not to go to the physical, well, not go to the physical therapist. I shouldn't say that. But it's to let the thing heal. And if we're constantly adjusting or pushing or picking that scab, it will not heal. So you have to let it heal. All right, so did we cover all of them? What was it? Stand up off the floor, sit down, go to the ground, get up off the ground. What does that one say? Oh, get out of bed. So if you're going to get out of bed, you would do that same, you do that roll. Do that roll. So let's say that you're laying on your back and you're in bed, and see? Right there, like even I did it wrong. If I was gonna do this the right way, I should roll to here. All right, so now I'm on my back, I'm in bed. I should probably one leg out, roll with the hip to get there, to be able to get out. Okay, you want to roll your way out of bed. You don't want to do a sit-up to get out of bed. By the way, this is one of those things we probably should go over. Sit-ups are terrible for your low back. They're 100% not spine healthy. Okay? Doing a sit-up with your low back is this, it's this very loaded position. It looks like it's really easy, like there's just not a lot of force there. The stress that is happening at the spine comparative to what it looks like is astronomical. It's to flip over and to do some version of a plank is much less stressful on the spine, much more stressful on the muscles that you're trying to hit. Okay? So do not do sit-ups to try to make your back better. It is actually making them worse. You would find a benefit to move to a dead bug variation, a lateral plank, and a bird dog. So most people will be able to do a bird dog, and really the way that I like to start people out is we give them something underneath their foot, just to let them have a little bit, just to work with something so that they can get that patterning down at their hip. So they're reaching forward, reaching back, and if you think of this is really just a plank where I'm holding position here and letting my hip and my arms do the things that they're supposed to do. Opposite of that, we can crawl them out, put them in a knee lateral plank, and we can open up that hip to get that butt to turn on just a little bit more, okay, to really make that thing burn. So from the back side, you'd be here, okay, and then we can where the knees are up, and we're gonna reach, and you're just trying to get this cross, this sling action so that the rib cage and lower back are pushed down on the floor. Inhale, exhale, and then you roll to stand up, crawl yourself up. So those 3 exercises are pretty spine healthy. And you can progress them as far as you need to, but those are like really easy places if you have a lot of back issues that you can use those 3 exercises. But the first thing that you have to do is to not pick the scab. Do not pick the scab. And if you're interested in learning more about this stuff, go to gritgym.com/PDS, sign up for a program design session, come out here, talk with us, and we usually show you a few different ways to help you out with this. And really, there's just no substitute for somebody else watching you do your movements because it's really hard to see yourself, right? It's basically like you're too close to the picture. You're the portrait inside the frame, and it's really hard to see yourself when you're in there. So much easier to have a qualified professional watching you. So gritgym.com/PDS will help you out a lot, but you have to stop picking the scab. And then while you're doing that, you have to put stress, an appropriate amount of stress on the trunk so that it holds position so that your limbs can produce the movement. We don't want any movement coming from here. We don't want this thing to be rigid. We want it to be able to move, but we want it to be able to produce a ton of stiffness. So we'll go over more videos around the trunk. There's a ton of different things that we can go over here. These are just really quick, easy ones. Stop picking the scab. Try out those 3 exercises. They're a lateral plank variation, a dead bug variation, and a bird dog variation. But gritgym.com/PDS if you want to learn more. Otherwise, we'll be back soon.